Hello, everyone. Welcome into episode 191 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. I am Nick Hill, as always, from Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States. Joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gus Tomazelli. Gus, how are you doing on this Tuesday evening?
It's chilly actually, a little bit cold. I wouldn't say is American cold right now. It's 55 degree Fahrenheit. So I guess
Well,
Americans will
we
call
are
that.
in a heat advisory right now. Here we have
Yeah,
heat index temperatures up to 110. So, you know,
literally twice the temperature here of Americana.
yep, it is the hottest week of the entire summer here in Chattanooga, not just for the weather reasons, but political reasons and all kinds of other things. Go check out my Facebook and WDF News 12 for all the latest on that stuff. But we're not here to debate property tax increases, Gus. We're here to talk sports. And
Yes.
and I do want to mention your Brazilian women are at 5-1 right now on Uruguay. They're on FS1
Yeah.
here in America.
Really?
Yeah. We're
Oh,
showing
I'm watching that game too. Yeah, it's showing here on Sport TV. It's the America Cup. The I guess it can say the South American women version of the Gold Cup. And with this win, Brazil secures their spot in the 2028 Olympic Games on women's soccer. So that win secures Brazil's spot in the next
Wait,
women's soccer Olympics.
is
What?
this is this the final of this tournament?
I guess not, but I guess there's two spots. Let me confirm. But I guess there's like
Is this
two
I'm about to
spots.
say this is a knockout stage. There's like no one there.
Yeah. How can I say it? It's women's soccer, and and so they're not very interested in that.
Yeah. Well, I mean the Brazilian women are good though. Like they've been deep several times
Yeah.
in the
So
tournament.
with this win, Brazil will be in first place of Group B, and I guess they probably gonna do some final against Colombia. Oh, and they're in the semifinals. Yeah. So I guess Colombia and Brazil will go to the Olympics, and they're gonna make the final on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to them. And while we're on Brazil, guys, what is going on with Rio Branco? Like a coach getting fired? Like, bro, like this is insane.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I was the one who produced the press release and published 3 p.m. Brazil time. Yeah, Fabio Totti is no longer Rio Branco's head coach. His
Mm.
tenure was very unsuccessful with 7 games, 3 ties, and 4 losses. No wins, only 1 goal scored, and 7 goals conceded. And the joke was the goal that Rio Branco scored was even a real goal, was a mistake by the goalkeeper. So things weren't going good. He even did practice. He was at practice today. Everything as business as usual. So it really caught me by surprise. But you know, to be honest though, and here I can, even though my boss says they might watch me. So, but hey, who knows? But I feel like it should have made that change sooner. Probably after the loss against Guarani would have been the best time because then we'll have more time to adapt.
I mean,
But
it depends on how much English they all know.
oh, so they always ask me to teach them, but we never find the time.
Right.
But
And maybe to your advantage, though, not to that way. So you have a place where you can come online publicly to complain
yeah.
about what's going on.
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying my opinion. But it is what it is, and but at least they made the decision with this team still alive. If Rio Branco wins their next 3 games, they're in the playoffs. So Rio Branco is not dead; they're still alive. But next Monday is a do or die game. It's a do or die game next
Get
Monday.
back in the booth. I know you want to be on the field, but they did better when you were calling the games in the booth.
I'll tell you what. I'll finish the Paulista Cup and then I'll make a decision.
Yeah,
I think about it. I'll I don't I try to do things beginning to end, and then I'll rethink my decision. But that's fair. I'm just happy I'm not have to call games with this era because that would have been if on A3 that we had the four consecutive losses was tough. Imagine right now, but you know,
right.
but tomorrow new coach will arrive and we'll see what's gonna be. Hopefully, things will turn around next Monday on the road.
Yeah, I guess I miss not knowing when the games are, and I guess I could pay closer attention to the WhatsApp group. But
Yeah,
like, yeah,
I'll send you the link of YouTube whenever the game is on. The next game is gonna be on a weird time, I guess, for here and for you too. 6:45 p.m. on Monday.
that is a very very specific time.
Yeah,
So
and then
Monday Night Football.
yeah, it's gonna be a Monday Night Football, and then the next one is gonna be Friday Night Lights. It's gonna be Friday 7 p.m. So the Broncos gonna play under the lights on Monday and on Friday. Next two games.
I gotta have a marching band for that one.
Yeah, would have been. Yeah, that's true. I feel like it's gonna be one of the first ever like real Bronco games. I watch it on Friday. I watched one time when I was a kid in 2009.
Absolutely, but you also got in Brazil as well. I know the championship is still ongoing,
Yeah.
and kind of how
Yeah,
are things going there?
Yeah, São Paulo and Palmeiras good wins at home. Especially Palmeiras, they're 4 points behind Flamengo. But it's kind of weird to analyze the Brazilian Championship right now because the the amount of games teams have they're different. For example, Flamengo has 36 points, 16 games. Cruzeiro has 34 points, 17 games, and Palmeiras have 32 points, 15 games. So the top three teams they don't have the same amount of games, so it's hard to analyze. You know, whoever's going to be at first. But I think it's going to be those three teams fighting for the championship this year. But all attention is on the Brazilian Cup this week, midweek, the first leg of the playoffs of the Brazilian Cup. We had one game tonight, Botafogo beating Red Bull Bragantino 2-0. But the biggest game of all is going to be Palmeiras versus Corinthians. Tomorrow's going to be Corinthians versus Palmeiras at Corinthians Stadium. The stakes for Corinthians much higher. I feel like if Corinthians were to be if Corinthians ended up eliminated, I think their coach Dorival Jr. is gonna get fired because I feel like for Corinthians is the only real possibility of a title this year. I know they already won the state championship, but it's different winning a domestic cup.
Vladimir Jr. just got there too. Like
Yeah.
he's not been there for very long.
No, no, yeah, it's true. He arrived a couple of months ago, and he is already feeling the heat.
Yeah, just in Brazil, man, you got to win instantly.
Yes,
No
yes,
time for a rebuild.
yeah. He arrived April, so literally right now he arrived on April 28th. So May, June, July. So 3 months.
That's insane. 3 months.
Yeah,
You
he's
know,
already. And Corinthians has the political situation. No, they have the interim president. A lot of investigations. The fans are protesting. Even in Disney, they ended up putting signs against the former presidents and former directors.
what do you mean in Disney?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why. Uh, they put at Disneyland in Orlando, Florida, signs against the Corinthians' former presidents and former directors.
That is insane. Oh, I see that. Yeah. For a Ratsan.
Yeah,
That
like
is
out. What is the women rat?
oh, that's a Minnie Mouse. Yeah, I see it with like Mickey Mouse in the front. The Reforma da Estado Ja with
Like
just Mickey
reform.
Mouse. Because I've been past that sign numerous times in my life. Because we used to go, my family used to go to Disney World all the time.
Uh-huh.
And I think we probably drove by that sign when we went to the
I
Citrus
imagine
Bowl.
I imagine Americans drive to that and be like, "What the hell is that?"
I mean, I'm
Over
assuming most Americans probably would assume it has something to do with ice or Trump. They would have no
there.
idea that's about a Brazilian soccer team.
Yes, yes. Only Corinthians can produce that amount of shame, and but Corinthians is a world team, and they want to call attention to the problems Corinthians are facing in their front office.
Screen real quick just so y'all can see this.
Yeah, good, Nick. That's true. That's sure. Shout out to Junior Portugal on Facebook and my grandma on YouTube watching us. Yeah, that's the one. That's the
Oh,
article on.
yeah. There we go. Yeah,
Yeah,
from
that's
goal.
the one.
It's so
Out.
fun.
Oh, reforma do estatuto. It's they want to make a reform of Corinthians so-called. What do you mean? Like in a club, in a country club, there's um like a not a constitution, kind of like a club constitution.
Oh yeah, and also too, I just translated the article over into English. So I'm
Yeah.
curious. So I'm curious how exact this translation actually is.
No, yeah, it's a good translation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's electric.
Yeah.
As a Vols fan who has protested the coach hirings, I respect that so much.
Yeah, Corinthians is a kind of team that are very engaged in terms of voicing their discontent, and definitely things can get way worse if Corinthians were to be eliminated by Palmeiras tomorrow, game one at Corinthians Stadium. I tried to apply for media credentials, got denied. Oh well, it's life. I'll try to go on game two on next Wednesday, but yeah, and the game just finished um, in Copa America, Brazil 5-1, alongside Colombia. They're both going to the next Olympic Games for women's soccer in 2028. And remember, the next Women's World Cup is going to be in Brazil in 2027.
Yes, yeah, and the next Olympics will be here in America in 2028 as well. So definitely a big. And of course, I mean, the next 3 years, right? Like we've got the men's World Cup, y'all got the women's World Cup, and then we get the Olympics over the next 3 years.
Yeah, a lot of good events.
Absolutely. Shifting over to American topics, and I want to kind of start off briefly on a heavy one. Yesterday, there was an attempt. There was a shooting yesterday outside of the NFL headquarters in New York. 4 people died in the shooting, including a police officer. And the shooter had a note blaming the NFL for CTE because he believed himself to have CTE. He played up to high school football at that level and had mental health issues. Um, Obviously, tragic incident. And I heard some discussion today, just of people being like, "Does this have any impact at all on the league, on football, the sport?" Because obviously, we know it's a cultural institution here in the U.S. But CTE is to me one of those long-term existential threats to the sport of football, particularly as you don't let children participate in the sport, and having a situation like this only reignites the look at that particular issue.
To be honest, it's gonna be another sad event that everybody gonna send thoughts and prayers, and they're gonna be talking for a little while. But in like 2 weeks, everybody's gonna be speaking on the next tragic event, or in sports, they're gonna be already focusing on spring practices on the NFL.
Absolutely, it's just so selfish because even if you had CTE, you know and blame the NFL for it, which, by the way, this guy never did play in the league, right? They didn't even get to college football. Like it's just asinine,
Yeah,
at
yeah.
least.
You made a choice when you put yourself on the field. If this guy has someone to blame, was his family that allowed that, and maybe, but and by the end was his choice.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, these victims didn't have a choice. So I do
Yeah.
want to just read out the names real quick, just to acknowledge Wesley LePatner, Didarul Islam, who was the officer involved in this, Alon Etienne, and Julia Hyman were the 4 victims. So I'm not going to say the shooter's name, not to give them any more infamy than their motive, but definitely rest in peace to those 4 victims. And the family and the friends that they leave behind, definitely prayers go to them during this difficult time. So we'll be thinking of them. Kind of moving on to some lighter stuff, still NFL related. Here in Tennessee, of course, we're getting ready for the debut of Cam Ward. And it's been a very interesting week here for the Titans. First and foremost, the Traylon Burks era is over. He uh, fractured his collarbone on Saturday, and he has officially been waived, injured. And in fact, actually, the Titans have signed Raymond Keaton, formerly of the Tennessee Volunteers, to take over his spot. But Traylon Burks, of course, he was drafted in the first round, 16th pick overall. In the same draft that we traded away A.J. Brown, Traylon Burks was basically the guy that we traded A.J. Brown for, and what is ultimately just one of the worst trades of all time. Just horrible trade. And I can't believe how much worse that trade has gotten over time.
Yeah, it, I mean, it's a situation of of a player that ended up getting injured again, and he was already not doing so well. So in the NFL, situations like that ended up going to happen, and he got cut.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, John Robinson, I mean, how do you throw away your goodwill with one decision? Like, we were the number 1 overall seed, and then you trade away A.J. Brown for a guy who had 53 total catches in his career. He had only 4 catches at all last year. He had 699 total yards. Um, just an ultimate disaster for the Tennessee Titans here, especially when you look at A.J. Brown, who has been to the Super Bowl twice, has won a Super Bowl, and has been very productive with the best team in the NFL right now. I mean, the Eagles, Howie Roseman, you got to give him credit. They absolutely won that trade, and the Titans being cheap, you know, you know, just cheapskates, it'll haunt them forever.
Oh yeah, for sure. It, Titans fans for this decade will always remember that moment.
Yeah, and I knew it because I was live streaming that moment, and I have it saved somewhere. Basically, I was doing a live broadcast. Remember that Insta Review podcast I used to do? For like right after it was like we did it for a year after college, and the last ever episode of that podcast was the live draft reaction.
Oh
And I
yeah, that's true. That's true. You did that with three other guys like Leon.
Yeah, Leon, yeah, but anyway, we're doing it, and like when that trade happened, I just remember doing this because I knew it was bad. It was instantly terrible, and it proved to be very just a disaster. So Traylon Burks for sure, just ultimate bust, and unfortunately symbolic of how the last 3 years of personnel decisions have just all been bad for the Tennessee Titans. Now, hopefully, we are turning a new page with new management and, of course, a new quarterback in Cam Ward. And there are some highlights that came out of the training scrimmage this week at Nissan Stadium that has fans really hyped. Like he was throwing some balls into tight windows and just had pitch perfect passes. He had one rolling out to his left. And you have some people being like, "Oh my God, he's going to be amazing. He's going to be the best quarterback that we've seen here in Tennessee in a long time." And I just guess I'm going to be very, very hesitant here. I want to see him do this stuff in a real game before I know him. Before I know him, and I really want to see him do this stuff in multiple games because we've been burned on this so many times. The Titans have not proven they can develop a quarterback. Um, I need to see this one be different, right? And I think Cam Ward has the potential to
because
be different, but I'm not sold.
I remember that Malik Willis had somewhat expectation. I'm not comparing the both, but he already came with some hype and ended up being bust. So that's true. Like scrimmage one thing, real game is another.
Exactly. Even Will Levis came out and threw 4 touchdowns in his first start. So, I mean, you just don't know.
Yeah,
In any case, let's get into some previews here. We have the NFC East on deck, of course, ESPN's favorite division, one of our favorite divisions to talk about because there's no boring teams really to talk about um, in this division. Of course, we have the reigning Super Bowl champions here, the Philadelphia Eagles. Man, it was crazy how early last year we were talking about if Nick Sirianni was going to get fired because there was some pressure on him. They trade for Saquon Barkley. They have all this talent. People wonder if Jalen Hurts can get it done. And then they won like their last 13 games in a row and dominated in the playoffs. Well, really, the Rams took them down to the wire, but then they dominated the Commanders in the NFC title game and then just shockingly destroyed Kansas City. And a result that I did not see coming at all. Um, Guess, do we think the Eagles should be considered the best team in the league heading into this season?
yeah, I think it's definitely on the top three alongside KC and Baltimore, and definitely Nick Sirianni will come with to this season with way more poise, I think, and now he's not gonna have his job threatened. I know he can get because remember the knock on him was he was already too emotional and was very his reactions on the sideline was something people discussed.
Right, but like if you win games, that's all that matters ultimately.
Yeah,
And Nick Sirianni has proven that, yeah, he can be a very emotional guy, but that he knows how to be. He just knows how to put a team together. He knows how to keep the roster together. And clearly, these and these players really believe and trust in him. And the fact they've been to 2 Super Bowls now in the past 3 years. Howie Roseman, I've mentioned him, in the previous segment, but he has done an incredible job. Now, the question is, how long can Saquon Barkley play at this level? Because he ran the ball 456 times last year. I mean, eventually his body's going to wear down. I mean, it's just natural for a running back. Now, what helps is the tush push wasn't banned, so Jalen Hurts will still be able to utilize that play. And I will say this: it's ridiculous that they were even debating getting rid of the tush push because if the play was so easy, why can't anyone else do it?
yeah, they were trying to prevent something that the Philadelphia Eagles mastered on, which is, as you pointed out perfectly, if was so blatantly obvious, like this would have been an automatic for all 32 teams in the league, not one.
Exactly. So, and the Eagles on defense, they do replace several of their starters. So that will be worth watching. They could have some defensive issues at times, but I do think overall this team is still going to be very good and very much in line to potentially win the division again. Now, obviously, who is their challengers? Now, the team that they beat in the NFC title game is one potential challenger. The Washington Commanders, who probably were the surprise of last year, right? They have a rookie quarterback in Jane Daniels. No one's expecting Washington to do anything. And all they do is go and win 2 road playoff games, including shocking Detroit on a Saturday night and winning and getting to the NFC title game with probably the best rookie season we've ever seen from a quarterback. I mean, I think that's fair to say in Jane Daniels. Like, I mean, I would have said Andrew Luck's rookie season probably was the best I've seen until Jane Daniels or CJ Stroud a few years ago.
Oh, but nothing tops Jaden Daniels because getting to NFC title game with also first year coach, right?
Yep. Yep, a first year coach as well. It, you know, when you take a look at the Washington Commanders here. Now, when you look at the team that surrounds Washington, right? With obviously Dan Quinn, of course, is a guy who's been to the Super Bowl before as a head coach. But the Falcons, one of the big questions I have right now is: are the Washington Commanders willing to pay Terry McLaurin to stay on this roster? Because I know you have a bit of a contract dispute between Terry McLaurin and the Commanders, and obviously, I might be a little selfishly interested in this as someone who owns Terry McLaurin in my Dynasty Fantasy League. If Jason Wyrick is watching, of course, he and I have talked about this pretty extensively. But obviously, I'm selfishly hoping that Terry McLaurin stays on the Washington Commanders just because I traded for him specifically because his connection with Jane Daniels is special. And he quickly became his favorite receiver. And I am just really excited to see what those two could do moving forward if this contract could be figured out. And it would be really maddening to me if this doesn't happen.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be something that can be a distraction for the Commanders, but yeah, he's a very productive player. If they can figure it out, definitely going to be an asset to this team.
Right. Now, if they lose McLaurin, they did pick up Debo Samuel from the 49ers. And Debo Samuel obviously was a Swiss Army knife for the San Francisco 49ers. And I'll be curious to see how he would be used in this particular system because, Kyle Shanahan has a very specific system, and I'm not quite sure if he'll be as effective in Washington. But obviously, with Jane Daniels, you would think that he would be pretty effective. Additionally, you look at running back with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler in the backfield, and really on the defense, right? I mean, the defense got absolutely destroyed in the NFC title game by a much better team in the Eagles, but even against the Lions, they didn't play very well. And I get that the Lions were really good on offense last year, but they're going to need guys like Marshawn Lattimore to step up and be really, really good. Of course, they got Bobby Wagner at linebacker. Of course, he's in the latter half of his career, but still, can he play at a high enough level? Von Miller, of course, is probably close to retirement. This probably is his last year, but Von Miller is going to give it one more go at Washington next to guys like Clayton Farrell and Javon Kinlaw. So I really, this Washington team is pretty good. But the big question is, does Jaden Daniels have a sophomore slump? Because he had just such a good season last year. It'll be interesting to see how opposing teams are prepared to deal with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes you have this first shock and you come to the league and surprise everyone. By year two, people figure you out. So we'll see if Jaden Daniel will keep the hype going or have a bump.
Absolutely. Now, time to everyone's favorite team, Gus, the Dallas Cowboys. We love talking about this team a ton because, well, Mike McCarthy is gone, and in comes Brian Schottenheimer, who was the OC last year.
But don't you have a feeling? I don't know. In soccer, it happens sometimes. Like if people joke about a coach is hired and you already feel he's gonna get fired soon.
Yeah, like when it comes to Dallas, right? Because on paper, there is talent here, right? You still have Dak Prescott, who's now 32. He's now in his 30s, right? And he's done, it feels like, basically nothing in Dallas. I mean, he's had some good regular seasons. They've won one playoff game, and that was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who had a losing record. So they haven't actually beaten any good teams in the postseason. Um, and of course, you have CD Lamb. And, but man, what I don't see what has changed about Dallas that would make anyone think they're a legitimate contender to even get to a conference title game for the first time in 30 years. Like, I wasn't alive the last time they were in the NFC title game.
It's mind blowing, but I have a feeling that the next uh, Dallas Cowboys head coach is going to be a current ESPN analyst who made history in college football. I have a hunch.
Yeah, and you take a look at the rest of their weapons, right? Like, running back room is not particularly great. I think a guy to watch in the backfield there is perhaps Jadon Blue, who's a rookie from Texas. I think he could do something, and maybe be the main guy in that backfield. Otherwise, you got Javonte Williams, who, I'm sorry, he was the backup in Denver. Like, why is he the main running back now in Dallas? He's Dallas is one of 10 teams with under $10 million spent on running backs. And keep in mind, this was the same franchise that once spent $90 million on a declining Ezekiel Elliott. So, make Jerry Jones's strategy make any kind of sense at all. And of course, outside of CD Lamb, they went out and got George Pickens. And I like George Pickens. I think he's a very good receiver. Is that a sign, though, that's going to massively change the outcome for the Dallas Cowboys? I just don't particularly think so. And yes, on defense, you still have Micah Parsons. You still have, other talent on that side of the ball. But I don't know.
I think it's a generation that ended up like, Dallas have since the magical 90s generation, with Troy Aikman, and they were coached by Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer. And after that, Dallas had like 2 or 3 generations, and we're finishing one that had another glimpses of, not even called success, glimpses of somewhat hope and then disappointment. This
The most interesting thing to me about the Cowboys is that Joe Milton is on the squad as one of the backup quarterbacks.
I thought he was in New England.
No, he got traded this offseason to Dallas. Yeah. So, because you remember he had that one really good Week 18 performance, and Dallas wanted him. So, New England got like a 6th-round pick, I think, for him.
Which was basically the round that he was drafted.
Yeah. So, hey, it would be fun to watch Joe Milton with CD Lamb. I honestly think that would be an interesting combo. But I will be fully transparent. I have definitely stashed him on my Dynasty fantasy team. So, I am bullish on Joe Milton's chances to get some playing time there. But that's neither here or there. All right. Now, time for the redheaded stepchild of this division, the New York Giants. Who's going to be the starting quarterback here, and why is the decision between Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston?
Wow. If you would talk about this duo 10 years ago, like one on prime of their career, another one was still hot, came in hot in the league. Now they're battling for the star position. I think it's going to be Russell Wilson. But man, oh man, how Russell Wilson fall apart after being traded to Denver.
Absolutely. I also want to shout out Colton on the TikTok live for liking the live. Thank you for liking the live here this evening. But yeah, honestly, I would start Jameis Winston, and that might be a hot take. I know Russell Wilson's the safer option, But like, you're the Giants. You've been the worst team in this decade, this division now for several years. You had that 1 year back in 2021 where you made the playoffs by accident because Daniel Jones managed to not trip over his own leg. And you had a really good defense, and Saquon Barkley was healthy. And we've seen how good, obviously, Saquon is. But now you don't have Saquon. You basically have nothing. Um, I mean, why not take some chances?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the over under this year for the New York Giants is 5.5, and it's just there's just not a lot of talent around the quarterbacks here. Honestly, I think the top running back here, by all when all is said is done, is Cam Scatabo, the rookie from Arizona State. Tyrone Tracy is the starting running back here. But Scatabo, I thought he was really, really entertaining at Arizona State. And I think he has a chance to do something in New York potentially. Now, of course, they have Malik Neighbors, and Malik Neighbors was great as a rookie with no quarterback. And that's why, I think Jameis Winston and Malik Neighbors could be interesting in terms of just, hey, screw it, we're going to throw the ball downfield and we're going to see where it lands. But otherwise, Wando Robinson, Darius Slayton, it's just not ideal if you're the New York Giants. I mean, granted, they've invested a lot in their defensive line. They've got Abdul Carter. And the Giants might have a pretty good defense. I just don't think their offense is going to produce enough to make them truly competitive. So, guess who are you picking to win this division?
And just to wrap up, I mean, Brian Dable, I mean, he's coming to the, is he in the hot seat?
I would say so, but how much of this is on him and how much of this is on the GM?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, I think both share equal blame here for sure. Um, but I
Yeah,
think everyone should be on the hot seat there. But it's kind of crazy how they just have not been able to figure out a way to solve the quarterback situation. But then again, honestly, you have to ask how many situations have they been to truly be in the quarterback situation? But you have to also ask why do they stick with Daniel Jones for so long? You know,
and
we
why he
all,
was drafted? I mean, I don't know what was the worst draft, Daniel Jones or Mitch Trubisky.
uh, well, the Giants actually stuck with Daniel Jones for much longer than Mr. Trubisky. Now, what's crazy is both of those players actually ended up starting in playoff games,
Yeah,
believe it or not, for those squads. So, my answer to that would be probably Zach Wilson was worse than either one of those two. But I mean, you know, and and Daniel Jones may start in Indianapolis this year. Well, you don't know, considering what happens with Anthony Richardson.
yeah, that's fair. I
I mean,
mean,
it's like we're on the mid quarterback carousel here at the circus. All the bad teams are just trading bad quarterbacks.
trying to find somewhat like the last glimpse of, of a promising quarterback, like, and the Giants are trying to get the last ounce of football out of Russell Wilson and even James Winston,
Pretty
and
much, yes.
maybe they're thinking if they battle it out for their starting job, they will, somewhat be competitive. But in terms of winning the division, I will and shout out to my friend Denver Broncos interim head coach until tomorrow. He's the interim head coach. Rafael Del Vedove. I'll pick the Philadelphia Eagles. Rafael Del Vedove right now is, what is the name of the guy who was the coach literally right after Pruitt, but he not even ended up coaching a practice?
Uh, God, who did they assign to that role?
Yeah,
Uh,
there was somebody who did the. Uh, I don't remember.
did,
Kevin
did
Steele. I
oh
think it
yeah,
was.
Kevin Steele, yes. About to say, because they assign Chaney to that role, but Chaney was assigned after the firing of Derek Dooley in
Yeah.
2020. Hey, also, did you know, Gus, Derek Dooley is running for Senate in Georgia?
Whoa.
Yeah, in the
The,
Republican primary. So there's
the
a
guy.
chance I may actually get to meet this man one day while he's campaigning. And, obviously all the reporters are going to be there, with hardcore political questions. I'm going to be there saying, hey, Derek, why did you not have a defense in 2012 and waste Tyler Bray? That'll be my hard-hitting question to Derek Dooley.
Derek Dooley, the guy with the weird quotes.
Yes, the weird quote. Yes, he's running for Senate next year. He's
Oh,
bragging
not surprised.
to
He had
run.
a little bit of Republican-ish kind of conspiracy-ish kind of type guy.
Right. He's going to try to run against John Ossoff. So, well, we'll see what happens there. I'm not gonna wade any further into those waters. But, um,
But
I'm
yeah, I'll pick the Eagles to win the NFC East.
Yeah, I will also take the Eagles. I think the Commanders are close. I still think they can make the wild card again. I think the Cowboys, if they stay healthy, have a chance of the wild card. But they got to stay healthy. Giants, probably not anywhere close to playoff contention, to say the least.
But definitely, I think it's going to be two teams going to the playoffs, and maybe Dallas, or am I being too optimistic?
I don't think. I think it's certainly possible. A lot of this depends on one, does McLaurin re-sign to the Commanders, and two, does Jayden Daniels have a fall off, and three, does Dak Prescott still have a great season left in him, and which he can at 32, which he absolutely can. Like, quarterbacks don't fall off a cliff like other positions, so we'll see what happens there. But I do worry that he's not going to have a good running game behind him, and that could lead him in a very precarious position. All right. Moving on to some college football here. Today is the beginning of fall camp in Knoxville, Gus. It might be 100 degrees outside, but we're doing fall camp. And Josh Heupel took to the podium today for his introductory press conference. And, of course, everyone wants to talk about the quarterback battle. Of course, there is a quarterback battle. Of course, you got Joey Aguilar. You have George McIntyre and Jake Merklinger. Of course, we've talked about this before, Gus. I'm Team Jake here. I just happen to think Jake's the best player out of all these three. I think he has the most upside out of these quarterbacks. I'm not a huge believer in Joey Aguilar after watching some tape. But hey, if Joey ends up being the guy, I will root for him. But I just don't think he's going to be great. But at the end of the day, whatever Heupel chooses, I will support.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Hype was going to his fifth season.
I know, fifth season, and we're having this unexpected quarterback battle. We didn't think we'd be talking about having a quarterback battle this year, but here we are, due to someone we will talk about here in just a minute.
And I hope Boo Carter situation will figure out, because he's definitely a great asset to his team. Of course, he can be a little, somewhat, very a player who's very chaotic. But I want him to succeed, especially because he was nice to me at the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah, so and obviously Boo Carter is also from Chattanooga, and there has some stuff I have heard that, if true, would be really bad. Now, I don't know if it's true, so I'm not going to say what that is on a recorded a video. What I will say is that some of the rumors I've heard the last couple of weeks were definitely not true in terms of what he may or may not have been involved in. Basically, what it seems like happened here is he just missed he missed some off-season activities for the team, and that really upset some of his teammates. And this has led to him being disciplined by his teammates, by his coaches. And thankfully, he hasn't been kicked off. There doesn't sound like there's any legal issues here. So I think, for someone who's just a sophomore, he's still really young. Like, this is his second year out of high school. Hopefully this is just a learning lesson for him, right? Like, you have to respect your teammates. You have to be there when they're there. No matter how talented you are. And Boo Carter is one of the most talented players on this roster by far. I mean, he needs to be out on the field playing, But at the same time, right? I understand that the team leaders here have to put their foot down and say, no, this is the way we're going to do culture. And I think it's especially big this year, given what just happened with Nico, right? Like, this is all right, we are Tennessee. We are the Vols. We are this program. And no one person is bigger than the power team. So, Boo Carter, hopefully he'll learn that through this because I don't want to lose him. He's a very talented player and we can use him on both sides of the ball. But clearly, he has some work to do. Hopefully, he puts in that work and regains the trust of his teammates and coaches.
Oh yeah, and hopefully we'll have great fall camp practices. I remember.
Absolutely.
I remember when I covered fall practices of Tennessee football back in 2019. Wow, time flies.
I mean, and obviously, everyone's going to be talking about the quarterbacks and Boo Carter. What else should we watch for, Gus? Like, what else are you thinking about when we think back to where the team did well, didn't do well? Of course, obviously, when we think back to the losses at Ohio State and Georgia, what are we watching for here over the next month?
See how the chemistry of this team develops, and watch uh, uh, how they find Coach Hypo, describe the practices, because you can find already a lot of about the team just the way the coaches talk.
Yeah, and of course, the coaches try to like mask a lot, but you can kind of get a sense, right? And for me, I'm really keeping an eye on what I hear about these receivers because receivers weren't good last year. Now, how much of that was on the quarterback, how much on the receivers, we don't know, but the receivers weren't getting open, especially against Ohio State. And if we're going to have any chance in those big games, the wide receivers are going to have to play a lot better. Um, so I'm curious to see what we hear about like the Mike Matthews and the Braylon Staleys and players like that over the next month. Now, speaking of the former quarterback, Nico Imialava, he is, of course, getting ready for fall camp in Los Angeles, UCLA, and he apparently last week of the Big Ten Media Days decided to put his foot in his mouth and decided to say that he, quote, went home to UCLA to be, quote, closer to family, that it wasn't about money, that he wanted to be back in LA around his family. Now, Gus, the reason why this doesn't make any sense is one, his family had spent a lot of time in Knoxville. As far as I understood, they had briefly moved to Knoxville. They had a house in Knoxville. Uh, so you're telling me, and additionally, Nico also said that he felt that UCLA would provide a good shot, a better shot at pro potential and being pro ready. So you're telling me a team that was sub 500 in the Big Ten last year is better than the SEC team that went to the playoff? That doesn't add up, Nico. It doesn't add up.
He's trying to find excuses for the obvious reason, which was the money that he feels like he was gonna get paid.
Exactly. And we didn't pay him because he didn't earn it. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but you weren't very good in the conference play last year. You just weren't. You threw over half your touchdowns against Chattanooga, Kent State, and Vanderbilt. Sorry. Like, could he be really good? Absolutely. And I think he will play well at times this year with UCLA. And of course, we're going to get into them when we get into the Big Ten. But you threw away this golden opportunity with Tennessee, and we'll see if he pulls it off at UCLA. I mean, I'm sure it'll be a storyline we will watch all year. How Nico does versus whoever our quarterback does. It'll be certainly a storyline for this season. And really, the thing about the transfer portal in general, there's going to be a lot of these storylines, right? Like, how does Jackson Arnold do versus the Oklahoma quarterback, or how does any ex player do versus their replacement at this school? It's just going to be fascinating to watch across college football.
Yeah, this new college football world scenario create those kind of moments.
Absolutely. One more note from the Big 12 Media Day: Scott Frost, new coach at UCF, of course, he used to be there, returned there. He stated that Nebraska was, quote, the wrong job for him and that it was not conducive to winning. Um, And Matt Rule kind of somewhat agree with him, saying that when he got to Nebraska, it was not in a place to win yet. He believes they're getting there, but I mean, I don't know if I can say Scott Frott's wrong. I mean, Nebraska has been just horrible for a decade, and of course, we'll get into Nebraska more when we get to the Big Ten. But it's you know when you have a former alum, a national title winning quarterback saying that about your school, it's not a good look.
Yeah, but Scott Frost had to do that jump. He was doing really well at UCF, and it's like you know uh, his alma mater calling. You gotta take the call.
Oh, for sure. Um, Yeah, but for Scott Frost, we'll see if he can get any success going at UCF. I happen to think it'll be a rough year for them this year. But that leads us to our second conference preview, guys. It's the ACC, and it's actually kind of surprising. ACC still hasn't disintegrated at this point, given how many lawsuits there have been. Of course, Florida State and Clemson fans talk constantly about how much they don't want to be in this conference anymore, but they are still there.
Grant of rights.
Yep, the grant of rights. It survived. The ACC lives on another year due to the grant of rights. But the ACC has some interesting teams this year, and obviously I'll start with the reigning champion, Clemson. And really, Clemson probably shouldn't have won the ACC last year. Let's just say it was thanks to our favorite choke artist of ours on another team down in South Florida that we'll get to here in just a minute. But
Mr.
that'll,
MC.
yeah, Mr. MC. But in any case, hey, they choked. Clemson backdoors their way in to the ACC title game against SMU, and they win and go to the playoffs. And there's a lot of hype around Clemson this year. They're a top 10 preseason team. They've got Clay Klubnik, who's still playing for them. Remember, he made his debut against Tennessee once upon a time back in the 2022 Orange Bowl, and now is entering his senior season. And Clemson has a fairly good roster here. And the thing about Clemson is, right, like they obviously have not been a big user of the transfer portal, but they actually have begun to use it just a little bit. Not like overly crazy, but they've used it a little bit.
So I guess Dabo Sweeney softened his never use of the transfer portal.
Yeah, because he did realize that if he didn't use it at all, that he was screwed. So he did start using it a little bit. Now, it's not like crazy how they're using it, but I mean, the roster that they have is fairly good. I think too their wide receiver room with Antonio Williams, Bryant Westco. They brought in Tristan Smith from Southeast Missouri State. That's of course a transfer. So the only issue on their offense is the fact they do have to replace Phil Maffa, but I do think that they've got some talent there. And of course, Clemson's defense has been fairly good most years, right? So, and
Yeah,
especially they've got
Dabo.
that run.
Of course, Dabo Sweeney is not on his prime. I feel like he, if he was on his prime, he would have went to Alabama instead of killing the boar. Because I remember, like 5 years ago, everybody was saying sure he would be the next Alabama coach, and he was not even considered for the job. But I think he will do just fine in Clemson.
Right. And Clemson has a massive week 1 game. They have 2 massive SEC games, right? Of course, you have the game at the end of the year at South Carolina, a team that came up to Clemson and beat you last year. But you also have week 1 at home, prime time against LSU. So you have the Tiger Bowl basically in a game that's defining really for both programs. To me, I think that game is bigger for Brian Kelly at LSU because LSU still has not won an opening game under Brian Kelly. I don't know if you knew that, Gus, but they've gone winless every single week 1 under
Whoa.
Brian. Yeah, because they lost to USC last year. They lost to remember they lost to Florida State a couple of years ago in week 1. they've just had some really bad luck to begin the season. And Clemson is another team that is just it's going to be another hard one for LSU on the road. We'll talk more about LSU next week. But I think Clemson, at the bare minimum, needs to sweep or at least kind of get a split in those games. And obviously, they would really, I think, want to win a Williams-Brice. Now, I happen to think South Carolina is going to be really, really good this year. But Dabo cannot let Shane Beamer beat him 3 out of 4 years in a row. Because that's a disaster for Dabo waiting. Because when Dabo first started at Clemson, Steve Spurrier owned him. Like, he won like 5 or 6 straight, and then Clemson got to control the Palmetto Bowl series for a while. But now South Carolina is about to take it back here if they don't find a way to win this year. So that Palmetto Bowl, South Carolina, Clemson is going to be a massive game that I think will have playoff implications.
Oh yeah, kind of like last year. South Carolina was considered for the playoffs.
Yeah, and definitely a lot more to talk about next week.
And Shane Beamer, I mean, he got swag.
Yeah, he does have swag. And Williams-Brice is a scary, scary place to play. Now, in terms of other contenders in the ACC, right? What about those pesky SMU Mustangs, right? I mean, hands up, how many people in the country could have told you before the beginning of last year SMU was even in the ACC? There's not a lot. No, people didn't realize that the Mustangs had kind of moseyed their way out over to ACC pastures. But hey, an 11-2 season, they make the playoffs. Granted, they got absolutely smoked by Penn State, but they made the playoffs. And you could say, well, they had a very easy schedule, which, yes, SMU did, but they took care of business and found a way to make the playoffs. I'm not convinced that SMU is going to do it again this year, because SMU actually has, I'm not going to say a hard schedule, but they've got a little bit more of a difficult. So they play Baylor a week 2, who I think happens to be really good. They got to go to TCU, and I know they beat TCU by a lot last year, but still I think TCU will be better. They got to go to Clemson this year. They've got Miami this year. They got Louisville this year. Those 5 games are harder than anything that was on their schedule last year for SMU. And I don't think anyone could sit here and tell you that they think SMU is one of the 12 best teams in the country last year, because they weren't. And arguably, go ahead.
But they ended up benefiting from a new system, and also they benefited from Alabama losing to Vanderbilt.
They did. I mean, and let's be real, Bama would have smoked SMU, I think. Yeah. But
Bama had 3 losses.
Yeah, I think, moving forward, right, when you take a look at especially how those playoff games went, I do think maybe a 9-3 SEC team should be getting in moving forward, considering how those playoffs went last year and considering how much stronger the schedules are going to be for SEC teams. Now, if SMU goes 11-1 with this schedule, yeah, they would 100% deserve to be in it, because that means they would have beaten some combination of a Miami, of TCU, Baylor, Louisville. I mean, those are going to be much harder games for SMU to play. And, they have Kevin Jennings coming back, and Kevin Jennings is pretty good, but he isn't great. And they have some other talent, but I don't know if this team is going to be as explosive as they were last year. So I'm not sold that SMU is going to be fantastic. Now, the team that probably, when you look at them top to bottom, that probably has the best roster in this conference is Miami. The Hurricanes, it seems like every year now the Miami Hurricanes have the best roster. And this year they have Carson Beck at quarterback, the former Georgia quarterback. There's one problem, though, guys. They have Mario Cristobal as head coach. And I don't care how good of a recruiter he is. I don't believe in him to win anything.
I mean, after that Georgia Tech loss, I mean, can you explain that still?
Yeah, I mean, if still, Gus, that's probably one of my favorite episodes of our entire podcast. Us reacting and breaking down that Georgia Tech debacle from 20.
Oh yeah, that was I love. I mean, yeah, that's true.
I mean, because I remember, I will never forget our back and forth WhatsApp messages. Just the mind blowing. But then last year, right? They were undefeated heading into November, and what happens? They lose to Georgia Tech on the road, and like, okay, well, okay, upsets happen, whatever. You still only have one loss. You control your destiny. But then you go up to Syracuse, you get a 21-point lead, and then blow it and miss the play. Not only get knocked out of the ACC title game, but then miss the playoffs entirely with Cam Ward, the number 1 overall pick. Um, I mean, how in the world can I trust Mario Cristobal to not mess up?
Yeah, and it was so funny that when he left Oregon, Oregon ended up being better. So
Yeah, I think Miami would be instantly better without him. I mean, outside of recruiting. Now, Mario Cristobal is a great recruiter, but he's just not a good coach. And I'll be honest, I don't think Carson Beck's an upgrade from Cam Ward. I think Carson Beck's actually a downgrade. I think Beck is good, but Beck was a turnover machine last year at Georgia. Like Beck had some really, really bad games, especially when you look at that Ole Miss loss, for example, that Georgia had. He had like a 3 or 4 game stretch where he had at least 3 turnovers in a row per game. I mean, Carson Beck he felt he was not as good last year, and partially was I think the Georgia receiving core wasn't very good last year, but and yes, the competition is going to be easier at Miami, but I don't know. I'm not sold. If you couldn't make it with Cam Ward in the ACC, I don't think that Carson Beck, elevates you.
yeah, I think definitely Mario Cristobal is a little bit of a hot seat because, as you point out perfectly, he's a great recruiter. So he has a lot of talent, but never ended up having any meaningful results. And kind of like Bud Jones. Like, remember, Bud Jones had. I mean, he recruited really well, but his coaching style not good.
Yeah. Now, speaking of hot seat, Gus, how about their arch rivals up in Tallahassee, Florida State and Mike Norvell? Because man, 2 years ago, 13-0, they get snubbed. They get absolutely just annihilated in the Orange Bowl, Gus. I'll never forget. Because that's when I was down. We were hanging out in Florida, and I'll never forget looking at the phone and being like, "Gus, they're down by 60."
Yeah, but everybody expect that because the amount of players that skipped the Orange Bowl. So okay, let's go to next year in Dublin.
Yep, they lose to Georgia Tech. It's like, okay, that's an upset. They come back home for Labor Day. They lose to Boston College and get dominated. Like, this team might be really bad. Then they lose to Memphis, and they're like, oh no. And then they go 2-10 last year. Just an absolute disgrace of a season. Probably the worst downfall I've ever seen of a team from one season to the next. And with Florida State, Mike Norvell, he's the anti-Dabo because he doesn't believe in recruiting. It's all transfer portal. Thomas Castellanos is their quarterback, the quarterback from Boston College last year. And, Castellanos this offseason is running his mouth saying, oh, we are going to beat Alabama. We are not scared of Alabama.
What's so funny about this recruit? So I guess if you can beat them, steal their quarterback.
Yeah, I'm talking about Boston College. Like, not even like that good of a team last year.
Yeah, but he managed to beat Mark Novell. So Mark Novell be like, "Get me that guy."
Yeah. So, I mean, and Castellanos will probably be better than DJ Jalele.
I mean, this guy. I mean, let's all. I mean, he remember when he was, recruited out of Clemson, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, Clem's already set after, you know, Trevor Lawrence leaves." And then he bounced around from Clemson to Oregon to Florida State, but never amount to anything.
Right. And do you know who their OC is, Gus? Gus Malzahn. is the OC at Florida State. So is he going to fix everything? I just, man, I just don't know. Like, and of course,
Yeah.
Squirrel White is going to be one of their top receivers too. And let's be real, Squirrel White was not great last year in Tennessee. To be fair, like Squirrel White played well in the 2022 Orange Bowl and really hasn't played that good since for Tennessee. So maybe he can find something in Florida State, but I seriously doubt it. I picked Florida State to go 6-6 this year because I'm just not that high. I think they'll be better because it's hard for me to believe they'll be 2-10 again. But man, just a disaster. Now, in terms of other potential contenders in the ACC, I think some teams to watch out for include Georgia Tech. They retained Haynes King. They have Jamal Haynes still at running back. They have some good pieces on defense, have a decent receiving core. Of course, you remember Georgia Tech, outside of upsetting Florida State week 1, they had that epic 8 overtime loss to Georgia where they should have won. They should have won that game. But that game got away from them. Probably what was the game of the year last year. At least one of the
It was a Friday night game. It was epic.
Friday. I remember watching that game with
I remember listening to the game on the way back to my house.
Yeah, I was doing a TikTok live with someone that night. But in any case, yeah, it was a pretty wild game that night that Georgia Tech ended up losing. And you just have to wonder for Georgia Tech, can they get another run at Georgia like that? Now, what's weird about Georgia Tech this year is, so they host Georgia, but they're hosting them in Mercedes-Benz, not at Bobby Dodd, which is weird. And which is so dumb for Georgia Tech because, yes, the stadium is paying them like $10 million to do it. So, yeah, financially it makes sense. But, like, that stadium is going to be mostly Georgia fans. I mean, it just makes no sense for Georgia Tech to give up a home game against Georgia.
But I'll say in this NIL era, that money can make a difference.
It does. It does.
In the NIL era, it makes a difference. 10 years ago, I would agree with you. This, in this new day and age, that money is going to make a difference.
Yeah. I will say this too. Georgia Tech, though, they have some huge games. First game against Colorado. Now, I did forget to put this in there, but I just wanted to shout out Deion Sanders surviving bladder cancer. He had his whole bladder taken out. He announced that in the press conference yesterday. So, prayers to him for his recovery on that, because he's going to still coach, Gus, which is pretty remarkable given what he's going through. So he's just showing how tough he is. But he plays Georgia Tech in week 1, and that's going to be a really big game for both of those teams. And then they host Clemson in week 3. And hey, if Georgia Tech can find a way to upset Clemson early, the sky is the limit for Georgia Tech. Now, in terms of other teams that could win, I don't know if there's any other teams in the ACC that could win. Louisville.
There's one. I'm a dark horse. I still is a viable. It's up in the south, up in Chapel Hill.
Well, before we get to North Carolina, guys, I do want to bring up Louisville real quick, right? A shout out to our friend Jason Wyrick, his school. In Louisville, right, with Jeff Brom, they've been really good for the past couple of years. They've got Miller Moss, now quarterback, the USC transfer. They have several really, really talented players around them. I think it's a team that at minimum will win 9-10 games. And depending on how things go in some of those tighter games, Louisville could be a team that sneaks into the ACC championship conversation. But, guys, you have read my mind, though. We got to go to Chapel Hill, though. This is the most fun team to talk about, Gus. And I don't know how much time we're going to spend talking about the football team versus talking about the off-the-field stuff. Because, man, North Carolina, it's quite it's the let's just say it's romance knows no limits.
Yeah.
In Chapel.
First of all, they fire Mac Brown, which I know they hired because of what he did in Texas, but he was already, not producing anything meaningful. I mean, he had a really good quarterback. He was even drafted in the first round and did not do anything.
Correct. Correct. I mean, the Mac Brown 2.0 just made 0 sense, and it ended up with them giving up 70 points to James Madison. So your problem was you went out, you hired an old coach. So basically, North Carolina's like, let's go do it again. I know it's Bill Belichick. I know he's won 7 Super Bowls, but the NFL experience does not translate automatically to college. It just doesn't. Especially with all this off the field stuff with his girlfriend. And look, how much does this actually affect the players? I don't know. It would be a little weird if my coach was dating girls my age, especially if they were 50 years older. I mean, like imagine Rio Bronco had a coach who was 70 and his wife was like 20 or girlfriend was like 20. How much do you think that affects the players?
Uh, I I don't know. I mean, it's different because in soccer in Brazil, the family doesn't stay much close. There's not much an environment for being the proximity that I guess the college sports world does.
Right. I'll say this though. I just think when you take a look at UNC, I mean Gio Lopez, he's a really good quarterback. He's a transfer from South Alabama. I think he's someone who could give them a boost. And defensively, I think North Carolina will be pretty decent. I mean, you've got Bill Belichick, right? Like, I think they're going to find a way to play some defense. I just don't think this offense is going to be very good for North Carolina, and I think they're gonna lose the several games this year. I have them going 6-6. I'm just not sold on UNC being any type of contender this season. I'm not sold on Bill Belichick long term being able to recruit at a high level or being able to utilize the transfer portal. And I think Bill Belichick ultimately is just not going to deal with college for that long, and he's going to leave and or get fired. You know?
I think I think North Carolina is gonna go 8-4. To be honest.
Yeah. I'd like to around on some of these other teams. I mean, the rest of them are not that interesting. I mean, Duke. I will say that Duke is a very interesting team with Mario Diaz, and they've got Darian Mensah, quarterback. I think Duke's a very solid team. I think they could be a dark horse to win the ACC if they've got a really, really solid defense. And if Mensah continues his play from Tulane, that's a team that can win a lot. However, NC State, I think Dave Doran is on his last legs. I think he could get fired this year at NC State. Remember, they had a lot of hype heading into last year, and then they get absolutely obliterated by Tennessee and Clemson, and they just kind of fell off a cliff. And I don't think NC State's going to recover from that. Wake Forest, they're on a new coach with Jake Dickert, former coach of Washington State. I don't think they're going to do much this year. Brent Pry needs some stuff to go right for him at Virginia Tech. However, my thing about Virginia Tech is they play South Carolina and Atlanta week 1, and then Vanderbilt at home week 2. Remember, they lost on the road at Vanderbilt in week 1. I think they lose to them both. I think Virginia Tech starts 0-2 to their two SEC opponents, and for Virginia Tech, that might push them to fire Pry. I mean, I think he's got to win at least one of those. Because remember, too, Shane Beamer is the son of the legendary Virginia Tech coach Frank Beamer. So that's an emotional game for Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I think definitely it's a turnaround, and the Virginia schools are setting for rebuild. Even the Hokies and the Cavaliers.
Right. But UVA, I think honestly, they might have their best squad under Tony Elliott, but they're at best are 6-6. It's they're not going to be special under Tony Elliott, but it's Virginia. Like they've had maybe 3 decent seasons in the last 20 years. It just you can't expect much from that particular program. Moving up north, Syracuse, of course, they had a really good team last year. We're going to see them play Tennessee in week 1. Now, I don't think they're going to be anywhere close to where they were last year. Kyle McCord's no longer there. Stephen Jelly is the quarterback replacement for them. He was a backup in Notre Dame last year. I think he's decent, but he doesn't have the weapons that McCord had. He doesn't have LeQuint Allen Jr. at running back. He doesn't have Trevor Pena, who transferred to Penn State. I do think that their coach is really good, but I still think that even with our off-field troubles this offseason, I still think Tennessee will be favored to win that game. I still think we have more talent than them. I think Syracuse is a middling team. Pittsburgh also, I think, is a middling team. I think they're like a 6-7 win team at most. The thing about the ACC is there's just a lot of middling teams. A lot of 6-win teams like Pittsburgh is in that group. Syracuse, I think Boston College probably in that group as well. Two teams that I think we totally forget about are the two California teams, Gus, because nothing says the Atlantic Coast Conference like the San Francisco Bay. Stanford and California. And actually, I had a pretty bold pick about Stanford. Remember they had to fire Andrew Luck, the GM, had to fire Troy Taylor and replace him with Frank Wright. My bold prediction is Stanford doesn't win a single game.
Well,
I
I think they're gonna go at least one game.
I mean, they could definitely be Hawaii and or San Jose State for sure.
Yeah,
but I picked them to lose both games, so sure. 0-12 for Stanford. Cal is not very good either. I don't know how Justin Wilcox still has a job. He's just not good. So I think we've touched on every ACC team. I'm sure there's one I'm forgetting. It's hard to remember who's in the ACC. I know Notre Dame is technically a side member. I guess should we talk about Notre Dame in this episode since they're somewhat affiliated, but they're not really an ACC team.
What's funny, I love to call what Notre Dame does to the ACC. Notre Dame makes the SEC their bitch. Especially in 2020, it was so obvious. Like, it was so, I don't know.
And the thing about Notre Dame is they would be the favorites to win this conference, I think. I mean, Notre Dame and Clemson would be by far the two best teams in this conference. I feel like Notre Dame would win.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame would definitely be the favorite to win it.
Yeah, but Notre Dame isn't. But I still think Notre Dame, when you look at their schedule, just to bring up Notre Dame in this episode, obviously, to be fair to them, they did actually schedule kind of hard. So their first game is at Miami, which is going to be a huge game there. Then they have Texas A&M. They go to Arkansas. They have Boise State this year. And I don't think Boise State's going to be as good this year as they were last year. There's no Ashton Genty this year for Boise, but I mean, they're still probably the best G5 team. Have a spoiler for who I think is going to be getting that last spot. Of course, you got USC at Boston College. And so, especially the first half of their schedule. But I think Notre Dame will not lose more than one game.
Which will make them pretty much spot into the playoffs.
100%.
And shout out to Roberto Cruz in Santa Barbara do West watching us.
Yeah. And as I said, I really think Notre Dame would win the ACC. If they're in, I think Notre Dame is very much a national title contender again this season.
So other teams that we just briefly mentioned, Cal Bears, I guess they're going to be in the bottom. Duke, I think they're somewhat shot to at least make a 6-6.
I think Duke has a dark horse chance of winning the whole thing, the whole league, and that might be a hot take. I'm high on Duke. Don't be shocked if Duke is this year's SMU. I guess
that's bold. That's bold. I mean, there's also Syracuse and Wake Forest and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think all three of those teams will be mediocre.
Yeah, me too.
All right, guys. So who are we picking to make the ACC championship? And this is just top two teams. There are no divisions. I think basically no conference anymore has divisions.
For me, Miami and Louisville.
Ooh, no Clemson. And who are you picking to win that title and win that game?
Finally, Mario Cristobal breaks in.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to take Clemson versus Duke for the ACC title, and I'm going to pick Clemson to win it. But in terms of playoff teams, obviously, if Clemson wins, they'll get in. It depends on what Miami does in the non-con, because Miami has both Notre Dame and Florida in the non-con. Can they win those 2 games? If they can, then maybe they can suffer a loss or 2 in ACC play and still make it in. If they can't win those games, then they almost certainly have to win the ACC. And they're probably the only team that has that opportunity fronted towards them. But Notre Dame and Miami and Florida State and Miami are certainly 2 of the most important games for the ACC this season, in addition to LSU at Clemson and Clemson at South Carolina. And Jason Wyrick says, I appreciate the love, Gus. You are more confident than I am. Well,
Why not? Why not?
Louisville was in the title game 2 years ago, so I mean, it's not impossible. I don't know if I believe in Miller Moss enough for them to overcome. Like, I'm high on Darian Mensah, for example, and it just feels like Duke could be that type of team where they get on a roll this year, because the ACC always seems to have just that kind of team. But in any case, that is the ACC. I'm curious, Jason, and Jason is more of an ACC expert than the both of us. I wonder who he has winning the league this year in the ACC. But in any case, we'll move on to some Major League Baseball and some really interesting news coming out of Philadelphia, because Rob Manfred tried to go into the Phillies clubhouse and went and talked to Bryce Harper and trying to convince him of supporting a salary cap, which led Bryce Harper to tell the commissioner of the MLB to, quote, get the F out of his locker room. Jason says he likes Miami over Florida State. I don't think Florida State's going to be good. I don't believe in Florida State personally. So, hey, you have more faith in Florida State than I do. But in any case, I mean, that's the thing about Florida State with the way they recruit and stuff. Like, it just. But hey, maybe I'm wrong when it comes to Florida State. But that would be a wild reversal for them to go back to being championship good after being really bad.
Yeah, would be the biggest turnaround. Because really good, really bad, really good again.
Yes. So, Gus, what do you think of this Robert Manfred situation with Bryce Harper?
I think Rob Manfred definitely is in a little bit of a somewhat hot seat. He's definitely the commissioner. I thought, Adam Silver was the most trending one, but he, I guess, now figured out some things in the NBA. Definitely Rob Manfred. I mean, the way he dealt with the Houston Astros controversy, I guess he's doing good with modernizing the game, but definitely the players are not content with some of his ideas.
Yeah, and to further set the context, according to ESPN, Harper said players are, quote, not scared to lose 162 games. So they're threatening a strike. And then Manfred, after Harper cussed him out, apparently he said, quote, he was not going to get the F out of here. So Manfred was like, nope, you don't tell me what to do. I am the commissioner of the MLB. I am Robert Manfred. And just, man, I mean, here's the thing, though, actually, and this might be a hot take. I agree with Rob Manfred. We need a salary cap in baseball. You shouldn't have such wide disparities between the different organizations.
But that's not going to happen.
I mean, it probably won't happen, but it should. Like, the product right now in MLB is getting diluted because these bottom-dwelling organizations are just never going to compete with the Yankees, with the Dodgers at this point, because they can't buy all the players. And it's kind of ridiculous that we just accept that baseball is different from the NFL and different from the NBA. Like, I want more parity in the MLB. Now, granted, baseball to an extent does lend itself to more parity because of the way that the games go. And just because you buy the best roster doesn't mean automatically you're going to win. Like in the NBA, for example, where it's more likely that you're going to win. But I would be an all-out supporter of a salary cap.
That's fair. I mean, it's a situation that definitely makes a tension between the owners and the players. I think the bottom league wants to have something like that. The Colorado Rockies, the Pirates, the Athletics. It's so weird saying Athletics.
Yeah, the not the Oakland Athletics, the West Sacramento. The West Sacramento. We hope to soon be the Las Vegas Athletics, but the AKA no one wants us Athletics. Yeah,
And even Jason's Chicago White Sox would think about that. Which it's crazy. Like the Chicago White Sox has the second fewest wins this season.
yeah, Jason. I know we've had this discussion before, Jason. So I don't. So I know he disagrees. He says, "I disagree. Salary caps are artificial. It doesn't matter if you can buy all the players. If you miss, you bury yourself. Be well run or lose a lot of games. As good as parity as you'll get. The Dodgers run right now is not indicative of the reality of the modern game. It's not sustainable at all." Which is fair. I just happen to think though that like obviously if you're the Dodgers or the Yankees, you're more apt to have that type of success. At least to me. Like, I mean, you're right, guys. Like we're never gonna see the salary cap, but I can understand why Manfred would be pushing for it, right? Because you
Yeah,
gotta think about like
because
Manning,
he represents the owners, not the game.
right? And you gotta also think about like managing interest in different markets, right? Like if you were in Pittsburgh, if you're a Pirates fan, why in the world would you be interested in going to see the Pirates play? Because you literally have the best pitcher in baseball right now, in Paul Skeens, and you can't do anything with him.
Yeah,
You're gonna go watch one pitcher play until he's inevitably shipped off to a much richer organization. Like, no. Like, I think it is imperative that you know you find a way to prevent the Dodgers and the Yankees from being able to just outspend everyone and spend a small country's GDP on their roster. But as Jason points out, right, that's not sustainable. Like you can't keep spending that forever unless you're in that window to be a championship contender, which definitely the Dodgers are right now. So it's just certainly interesting to think about a commissioner going into a clubhouse. Like, could you imagine Roger Goodell doing something like this? Adam Silver doing something like this? I mean, give credit to Rob Manfred. He's at least going into the clubhouses.
yeah, that's true. He's being at least courageous.
Yeah. And Jason says MLB needs to find better owners. That's where you'll start. Absolutely. I can think of a lot of organizations that need some better owners. Force out the ones cancerous to your league. Absolutely. Every league needs to learn that lesson. Okay. Also, we have, more controversy this week with the MLB. We have a gambling situation this week for the MLB, man. It's, we just seem to have more and more gambling problems that pop up now that gambling is just legal. And, this with the Cleveland Guardians, with Luis Artes and Emmanuel Claus. And, the whole accusation began with Ortiz when allegedly he was influenced in prop bets that he would either throw a ball or hit a batter in his first pitch in an inning. And apparently, in two particular different cases, he threw an outrageously out of the strike zone ball, which triggered this investigation into their activities. And apparently, the MLB, when they were looking for Ortiz, they found a clause to also be potentially involved. And he is a three-time All-Star as well, Gus. I mean, how much of the first and foremost, like, do you think that 2 pitches are enough to open an investigation like this? And 2, like, do we think this is something that's happening more and more?
Yeah, I think leagues are gonna run with those problems with this new gambling era. I mean, soccer dealing with a lot of that here in Brazil and worldwide. So it's inevitable that baseball, football, and basketball will deal with that in America.
Yeah, so it'll be fascinating to see if these 2 get suspended for a long time, if they get banned. Of course, we know what they did to Pete Rose.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, he should have gotten a chance to celebrate his career while he was alive. It was kind of ridiculous that he didn't. But in any case, I will still maintain he never bet against himself. So, I know you're not supposed to, but come on, at some point, man, just. But we all know baseball writers, right? If you're not the perfect saint, uh, they won't let anything go.
Yeah.
I mean, you see that Ichiro Suzuki. I think he was like doing an acceptance speech the other day, and he was kind of like calling out the one guy who voted against him.
The what?
Yeah, Ichiro Suzuki, he was giving a speech the other day, and he was kind of mocking the one sports writer who didn't vote for him to be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, I imagine what Derek Jeter would do something like that too.
Right. And he says, by the way, the offer for that writer to have dinner at my house is now expired. So, I mean, just imagine, Gus, like, what does it take to be a baseball writer? And for the baseball writers of America, like, do you actually have to like baseball, or do you just have to pretend like you know more um, so you gatekeep?
Yeah, you spit a bunch of random facts, tell you cover the game for X amount of decades, and you be like, I'm a specialist.
Absolutely. And if they don't play the game the way I think this should be played, then you don't get into Cooperstown. So
Yeah.
it's quite interesting. Now, I wonder what the baseball writers think about the MLB at Bristol, though, this weekend. Braves and Reds on Friday and Saturday, live from Bristol, Tennessee. And of course, the Braves, let's be real, it's not a good season. But hey, this is still exciting to watch. It'll be exciting to see if the Braves can win this game. And it's just cool to see them be a part of this. Now, is it as cool as the Tennessee Virginia Tech game? No, but like the uniforms are cool. And it would still be a spectacle. And at the very least, this is pretty much the last thing worth looking forward to with the Braves this year.
Yeah, I guess the Braves, like, after that game, we're done for the year.
Pretty much, yeah. This will be probably the only game I'll watch the rest of the year.
I mean, they're 1.5 game above the Nats in the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you kind of have to blow it up at this point a little bit. I mean, they're shopping Marcell Ozuna, so that's kind of where the Braves are at right now.
I think Brian Stink.
Well, I don't even blame Brian Snitker here. I think this is Alex Anthopoulos' fault. He didn't make the moves in the offseason that he should have. And we don't have the depth, especially at pitcher, that we need. Now, granted, I would like to give them a chance to right the ship, right? Like, we did just win a World Series 4 years ago. Like, let's not get this twisted. And up until this past year, we had made the playoffs 6 straight years in a row. So sometimes bad years happen, and this is just a bad year. And these guys have proven they can win in the MLB. So give them a chance to right the ship. I think it would be ridiculous. I think it would be probably a knee-jerk reaction, and it could lead us down a bad road if you knee-jerk fire them. But let's not get it twisted. This year has sucked. And another year like this, and you might need to think about changes.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I feel like that's true. Like there's a lot of credit.
Yeah, but of course, Mets Phillies still a crazy battle. 1 game apart. The Brewers and Cubs 2 games apart. Dodgers up by 4.5. Blue Jays still leading the AL East. The Astros only leading by 3 against the Mariners. Tigers still up by 9 over the Guardians. So it feels like the Tigers will run away with the AL Central. The rest of these are still up for grabs.
Yeah, yeah. The battle in the NL East. It's insane between my New York Mets and my friend Rafael Della Vedova, Philadelphia Phillies.
Absolutely. Um, all right. The last topic I have here for tonight is Bubba Wallace. Shout out to my man, Bubba Wallace. He won his first race in 100 at Indianapolis on Sunday. Clinched his spot in the playoffs. Awesome celebrating with his family, kissing the bricks. Great, great scenes. Yeah, someone who's interracial. I mean, not to pull the race card or anything here, but it's always good to see him win in NASCAR. Was a great scene. They're going to Iowa this week. Should be a good crowd there, and hopefully a decent race. And NBC takes over for the last part of the schedule, and that they have 14 races remaining in this season. Also, they announced last week that they are going to be racing on a military base next year
Oh,
in San Diego on Father's Day weekend. So that's going to be a very interesting race.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But that's all I have, Gus. And I think that's all the time that we have this evening. For Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. For Gus Tomazelli, I'm Nick Hill. Y'all stay cool if you're in America, and I guess stay warm-ish if you're in Brazil. So you have a good night.